All right, y'all. We are continuing to talk about the emergence of Brandon Aiyuk. Is he as good as he's been playing so far in camp? We're going to get to that. Also, Jimmy Garoppolo, he's been thrown on the side of the field. Is he ready to either get in action with the 49ers or maybe get in action for another team? And also, Trey Lance, how has his progression looked? We're going to discuss those things with Tracy Sandler, as well as have Jason Hurley on to talk about all things with the salary cap, Deebo Samuels, the ramifications of that, and more right here on the San Francisco 49ers Morning Show. Let's go!
Intercepted. It is picked off by Crocker. Over midfield, he'll run it all the way into the end zone. Touchdown.
Crock TV podcast. Peace.
Welcome to another episode of the San Francisco 49ers Morning Show. I'm your host, former NFL and AFL defensive back, Crocker. And as you can see, I'm joined by San Francisco 49ers beat writer Tracy Sandler. You can find her on Instagram at Tracy Sandler. I'm definitely following her already. You should too. We're going to get into everything pertaining to the 49ers, what's going on during training camp right now. And if y'all haven't noticed, I'm like live, but not live. I'm doing the whole premiere thing because I want to make sure y'all get a show this morning. So, Tracy, how you doing?
I'm good. Thanks. How are you, Eric?
I'm good. And I'm even better because the last time you came on last week, we came on at Wednesday evening, and you got a lot of love. There were a lot of people that were excited to hear your perspective, and they definitely talked about how good of a job you do.
Oh, thank you. That's so nice. That just made my day. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, so you're doing something right over there. We are going to get into, I guess, not doing something right with the 49ers and Jimmy Garoppolo. The handling of this situation has definitely been, I guess, interesting to say the least. A team that was actively trying to trade him at the combine. It was announced then that he was going to have a shoulder surgery. He wasn't able to throw. Teams kind of fell back. And then now he's in training camp. You got this guy, Trey Lance. He's trying to fight through ups and downs. He's doing well, but he, that confidence, etc. We're going to get into more of him. But Jimmy Garoppolo is now throwing on the side of the field with all the fans still loving him as they already do love Jimmy. But what do you think happens with Jimmy Garoppolo? Do you think he ends up staying on the 49ers somehow, some way, or at some point he'll either be dealt or released?
He's not staying on the 49ers. He's definitely not staying on the 49ers. So he'll either be dealt or released. And I think we may know more. This week the NFL, or today on Wednesday, the NFL put in their appeal for the suspension of Deshaun Watson, who was suspended 6 games earlier this week. And so I think it could very well depend on what happens with that appeal. If it stays 6 games, then I think the Browns don't become a landing spot. I kind of felt earlier this week that if it is a longer suspension, maybe it becomes a landing spot for Jimmy Garoppolo. There would have to be some contract restructuring. But my feeling is something happens, and this is just a feeling, something happens within the next week, whether he gets traded, whether they release him. I am of the belief if it isn't end up being the Browns and there are really no trade partners in the next week, I think the right thing to do by Jimmy Garoppolo is to release him and let him find a team. I mean, he's done everything right. He's done everything they want him to do. And I just think, it's time to kind of let him go off. And I know they want to get something for him, and I completely understand that. And hopefully they can. But if not, I think it's time. But yes, he is throwing on the side. And the reality of that, it feels very strange due to the situation. But if he was any other player rehabbing, that's what he'd be doing. He'd be on the side. But it is kind of a sticky situation. I don't think it bothers Trey Lance. It's just kind of an odd situation that maybe we haven't really seen before.
Yeah, and I don't think we ever will see a situation like this again. Very odd. And it's almost uncomfortable even reading the comments on social media. Don't do that, because you'll see guys saying, oh, Jimmy Garoppolo, go home. And then you see a bunch of other people that are like, oh, we love Jimmy. Hope he's starting week 1. And it's almost like it can kind of cause this divide, but not really. It's like Jimmy's looking at it like this. I didn't ask for this. And he spoke about, at the end of the season, he was on this podcast and he said, I wouldn't wish this situation on my worst enemy. It's not a great situation to have to know that, all right, I'm playing behind this guy who's the number 3 overall pick. I know he's the guy, the writing is on the wall, but now I have to kind of go out there with a smile, do my job, and act like it doesn't bother me at all. And I think he did an amazing job of doing that. We talked about Jimmy G a little bit, but now we want to kind of turn the page as the 49ers are doing and go to Trey Lance. And obviously, Trey Lance, I've seen some things where, and I can't wait to be out there. I'll actually be there at practice Friday and Saturday.
Oh,
I'll be in the stands, but I get to see it in person a little bit. But just kind of seeing, I guess you could say, ups and downs. I don't know what people were expecting to see him have to go through, but for you, with your eyes, heading into training camp, what were you expecting to see from him? And do you think that has met your expectations?
I would say yes, because I've always felt that the season is probably going to have some ups and downs, and that is not a knock on Trey Lance. It's just he's essentially a rookie quarterback who's going to be a starter for the first time, and he really didn't play all that much last year. I think we'll continue to see improvement in game after game, but I think as far as training camp is concerned, it has been very up and down, but you can see the potential. You can see what's there. And the other thing that I always like to remind people, and Kyle Shanahan has kind of said this, and even Trey said it last week, this is kind of what training camp is for. He is supposed to kind of let it rip and throw the ball and see what happens. And if he gets intercepted in training camp, he gets intercepted in training camp. But does the wide receiver learn something about running that route? Does Trey learn something about who he can throw to in a certain situation and who he can't? I mean, I think all of that is what training camp is for. And I go back to 2017 when we all saw Brian Hoyer in training camp and thought, well, maybe this will work out fine. And obviously it didn't. So I don't know that a training camp performance is the best indication in terms of numbers, because they're there to learn and make mistakes and figure things out. I mean, Deebo had a quote yesterday, not about that, but just said they're just trying to figure out how to figure it out, I think was the quote. And I was like, I mean, same. But also I do think that is the team right now. And so I think with Trey, it's really kind of what I thought, that there would be ups and downs, but you see the potential, you see the ability, you see kind of who the chemistry needs to work with, who it's really clicking with. And he is going up against a really solid defense. But I'll also take you back to 2019 when Jimmy Garoppolo threw 5 interceptions in a practice, and then the 49ers went to the Super Bowl. So, and Jimmy had Jimmy had a good season. So I know there are people who have their opinions on that in the postseason, but nonetheless, the team did go to the Super Bowl.
The team did well, and everyone around him was able to rally, and they did it together, regardless of what anybody thinks.
So I think with training camp, it's kind of what I thought it would be, because it is going to be up and down. He's got a learning curve. And so I think it's been good. But what you do see is poise and confidence, and he's not afraid. That's, I think, the thing that's really important. When Trey Lance lets go of the football, he's not afraid to throw it downfield. He's not afraid of being intercepted by his own defense. And I think that, to me, is more important than anything else at the moment.
Whew, I like the way you put that. Well, one guy he's definitely throwing down the field to, and we've seen some beautiful connections, is Brandon Ayuk. And it's I don't know what's happened. I don't know if it's the whole thing with Fred Warner, but he has definitely, it seems, taken his game to another level. We heard Jimmy Ward talking about him and saying, hey, aside from Nick Bosa, this guy, Brandon Ayuk, has had the best camp to date right now. So what's the difference? Like, you've seen him over the first couple years of his the start to his career, and now you have a guy who's really working to take his game to the next level in year 3. What difference have you seen from maybe the level of just his approach to the practice field, some kind of attention to detail? What has he said about maybe this transition that he's going through right now? But I just want your thoughts on Brandon Ayuk in general.
Well, his rookie season was 2020, and there was not a real training camp. They came late to training camp. There was no preseason. And, Kyle Shanahan will say he learns more at training camp practice than a preseason game. But it was a very strange year and a very strange season. He had a great rookie season, but that was a little bit off. Then you fast forward to 2021. Things are somewhat back to normal, but not entirely back to normal. And you have a guy who was a relatively high draft pick who had a great rookie season, and he was in the doghouse. And he and Kyle Shanahan went through it for the first half of the season. But then we saw in the second half of the season him really start to come alive again. And to his credit, he took whatever Kyle Shanahan was telling him, whatever his coaches were saying, and he took it to heart, and he thought about it, and he got through it. He didn't throw a tantrum. He didn't pout. And that, I think, says a lot about Brandon Ayuk, the person and the player. So now you have a guy who in the second half of the season really played extremely well. and went into an offseason really now understanding what you need to do in the NFL to train, how to take care of your body, how to get better, the extra work you have to put in. He spent all this time with Trey Lance in the offseason, which was it seems to be working out very well because their chemistry is very much in sync. He's also catching passes from Nate Sudfeld, so a lot of it is Ayuk, but they obviously have a very good chemistry, him and Trey Lance. And so I think it's just that learning in the NFL. But when you go back where Brandon came from, 2020 was a weird year. And for all the rookies that year, they didn't have a real, I think, sense and understanding of what it takes to really succeed in the NFL just because they didn't have an offseason program. They barely had a training camp. They were just kind of thrown a little bit into the fire. And it was just weird. They had an off-season program, but it was weird. The whole year was just bizarre. So I think that's a part of it. And so I think he came out of last season seeing what he was capable of and having learned so much from his coaches and his teammates. And we are certainly seeing it paying off, at least in training camp. Of course, we're to see it pay off. We won't really know anything for real until September, but it certainly seems to be paying off in training camp.
Now, he talked about kind of a few days ago, Fred Warner, and he was like, man, that guy's annoying. And I try to tell people, like, man, that's not just nothing. Because one thing I think a lot of people think, offense and defense, yeah, they're on the same team, but you're around one group much more than the other group. So a lot of times, if you didn't really kind of come in with a player, like when I was with the Jets, I came in with Geno Smith and some other rookies. So, there were times where we probably would hang out and whatnot. But for the most part, like, I was around the defensive guys more times than not. And you don't develop that, like, close relationship with maybe some guys on the other side. You respect them. They are terrific football players. These guys can play ball for real. But just in the sense of just, like, that personal relationship, I think sometimes fans might think it's a little closer than it is. So when you see a situation like Fred Warner and Brandon Ayuk where Fred Warner's intentions were very pure, very good. He just says, I know how good this kid can be. I want to work to get the best out of him. But Brandon Ayuk, someone who doesn't really talk a whole lot, that's what everybody says. Like, he's not someone that just really is vocal. And when he basically squares up with Fred Warner multiple times in one practice, I was like, there's a little something there. And then he put out some Instagram posts. So are you aware of the Instagram post? I'm not aware of the Instagram post. So that was recent. I just recently seen that on my timeline. And he had Jimmy Ward in the picture. It's him catching the ball. You see Jimmy Ward kind of in the distance. I guess he was covering him, but he just wasn't really close. But he goes on to say, I respect you, Jimmy Ward, etc. But if anybody tries to little bro me, that's not going to happen. I'm a big dog. And it's like, you could tell, like, the whole situation with Fred Warner made him feel some type of way, but maybe for the better, because right now, like you said, we've been seeing the best version of Brandon Ayuk.
Well, and actually, okay, I did see that. I saw that in his Instagram story earlier, now that you mentioned it.
Okay. Yeah.
I will say, so one thing about the Ayuk quote from last week, when he said, Fred is annoying, he did go on to say, but I can't be mad at him because he told me. So he was aware. And then, obviously we saw Fred explain it. Definitely, I think the tempers flared, and we saw tempers flare at practice, and there was now the infamous fights and all of that. But I think a lot of that too is that they're on the same team, but they're also competitors. And these are competitive people at the top of their games. And there probably does come a point. Do I think that Brandon and Fred are feuding? No. But I think there were those moments at practice, and Fred was even asked, like, what's the line? Is there a line? And maybe they found it yesterday, but I don't know that Ayuk post meant anything more than because Jimmy Ward said today what you said, that Brandon Ayuk is having the best camp of anyone, offense or defense, except for maybe Bosa, because Bosa's Bosa. And Ayuk put that post up maybe a half hour after the press conference ended. So I do think that the post was really just meant for Jimmy Ward as a thank you. But, who knows? But I think they say it a lot, and it's true. Iron sharpens iron, and I think it is good for everybody. And the other thing, and going back to what you learned in training camp, this is also learning, because in a game, the guy on the other team may jaw at you all game long, and you don't want to be getting ejected or a 15-yard penalty. So this is good practice for everybody in all of the ways.
Yeah, and you talked about the defense and, opposing side of the ball and all that good stuff. this 49ers defense, you've been around for a while now. You've seen several 49er defenses roll through here. You've definitely seen the last few years with the San Francisco 49ers and how dominant they've been able to be in 2021 and 2019 for sure. So the last thing I want to ask you, how good can this defense be?
This defense is pretty incredible, and I think a lot of it right now is because of the secondary. The addition of Charvarius Ward has absolutely changed the 49ers secondary. And if the secondary is playing at a much higher level, that makes it a lot easier on the line and the linebackers, and it trickles back. So all of a sudden, if the secondary is playing well, then the guys on the line can now get to the quarterback because the quarterback is searching for someone to throw the ball to. And this is, I know I'm simplifying it, but that's the reality. So the addition of Charvarius Ward has changed his secondary. It seems that Emmanuel Mosley is playing at a very high level. He's healthy. That's a big part of it for him. But if the secondary can stay at as high a level as they seem to be in camp, and if Charvarius Ward there's Charvarius Ward, Tarvarius Moore, and Jimmy Ward, and it's just a lot going on. If Charvarius Ward plays in games like he's been playing in camp, it changes everything. And I think it does take the defense to the next level because this, at least from my recollection, this is the most talented secondary, at least since I've been here. This is the most talented secondary that I've seen in a very, very, very long time.
Awesome. Well, Tracy, I appreciate you for coming on. Thank you for your time. And we'll see you same time next week.
Sounds good. And thank you for having me.
All right. You have a good night.
You too. Bye.
All right, y'all. That was Tracy Sandler. Make sure y'all follow her on Instagram at Tracy Sandler and on Twitter at 49ers Fangirl. She's doing a terrific job as a 49ers beat writer, covering the team. She's there at everything going on. And as you can see, great insight. But now we are bringing on my guy, Jason Hurley, and he's going to join me right now to talk a little bit about Deebo Samuel, his contract, and just the outlook on it moving forward. So with no further ado, I'd like to bring on my guy, Jason Hurley. Good evening, Jason. And I say good evening. This is actually like a morning show, but I'm premiering it to be live tomorrow morning, but all that good stuff. But anyways, how are you doing?
Good. How you doing, Eric?
I'm doing good. So typically this would be live in the morning. We're recording it in the evening right now.
Right.
But I appreciate you, coming on and giving me some of your time to go over some of these contract details. And I told you last week, people, they requested you. They said, hey, you need to bring on Jason Hurley so he can talk about this Deebo Samuel contract and exactly what it means. So can you please kind of go over some of the details? I know on the face of it and what was initially reported, it was a 3-year, $71 million contract with some escalators in there to where it can be 73.5. Is that correct?
Yeah. The contract breaks down as a 3-year deal worth $71.55 million. It can get up to 73.5 with incentives for him rushing the ball. So that whole wide back he'll be a part of the offense as a wide back.
And that was something a lot of people thought he didn't want, right? There were a lot of people that were saying, oh, he doesn't want to be utilized as a wide back anymore, and would that diminish his value? But he said, listen, I embrace the wide back role. Like, y'all saw the Cowboy clip. You saw me call for the ball. You guys heard me at the Pro Bowl talk about, the new position wide back. So why shortly after that would I go out there and say, you know what? No, I don't want to be utilized that way. So I know a lot of those rumors were kind of floating around. What is this void year thing in a contract? Because I saw that kind of in some of the layout of it, but I have no idea what this void year is.
A void year is usually used for salary cap reasons. It's to spread the signing bonus or an option bonus over 5 years. So apparently Deebo got 2 voidable years on his contract. So technically it only runs through 2025, but there's also a 2026 and a 2027 contract year. But they're basically phony years. They're dummy years.
So does that just mean that he can be paid for those years, even though he can potentially not even be on the team?
Well, he already got paid that money. He'll already have gotten paid that money. He'll have, I think, an $8.439 million dead money hit in 2026. unless the team agrees to a new extension with them before the contract voids.
Gotcha.
But it'll be comprised of part of his signing bonus, which is $24.035 million, and then part of his option bonus, which is due next year, which is $9.215 million. It's just
So,
like the leftover of what the prorated money is on the cap.
all right, so there were a lot of people that felt like they couldn't get something done with Deebo Samuel unless Jimmy Garoppolo was
Right.
off the books. And clearly Jimmy
Right.
Garoppolo is still on the team, so
Yep.
that was
Mhm.
definitely false. So has Jimmy Garoppolo's money on the books right now hindered them from making any bigger moves?
No, not at
Or,
all. I've been very vocal throughout the offseason that the 49ers could extend Deebo Samuel, and they could have extended Nick Bosa without having to release or trade Jimmy Garoppolo. Having him his $25 million on the book isn't a hindrance to the team right now. Yeah, it would be nice to have the money, but if you look at the way John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan talk, they're open and they're upfront about everything. And Kyle or John said basically, this is what our off-season plan was. We got Travarius Ward, upgraded the special teams. That's what we wanted to do. I know people wanted them to go after Chandler Jones. They were apparently in on him. People wanted Tyrann Mathieu. No idea if they were in on him. But even then, if they wanted to have signed those players, they could create cap room by simply restructuring a Trent Williams, saves over $4.9 million. So they had other ways of creating cap room without having to basically
release or trade or anything with Jimmy Garoppolo.
release. And if they were to have released Jimmy during this period, there's a $7.5 million injury guarantee that he would have got. And that only is if he is released while he's injured. Since he's been cleared and he's throwing the ball, they should contractually be, they shouldn't have to pay that if and when they do release him.
So I'm pretty sure you've seen the videos of Jimmy Garoppolo throwing, and I just asked Tracy Sandler this, but how do you see this situation playing out?
I think he gets released.
Yeah.
I don't know unless they do suspend Watson for a whole year, like Tracy was saying, because I was watching it, and I don't know of any other team that needs a quarterback unless there's an injury. He's just going to get released.
Well, I know there are a lot of people that are like, "Oh, thank goodness," but how do you feel about Jimmy Garoppolo? And I guess this is your chance to kind of give him his flowers, or do you feel any type of way? I know you've seen a lot of the 49ers great quarterbacks, and I'll throw Jimmy Garoppolo in there because there have been a good amount of bad quarterbacks as well, and he's definitely better than that. So throughout your time watching Jimmy Garoppolo as a 49er quarterback, how has that time meant to you?
It's meant a lot. I have enjoyed Jimmy on the team. I thought he was a really good football player. No, he doesn't have the best arm strength, but he's a winner. You win with him. So it's sad to see him go, but it's also exciting to see what's going to become with Trey at the helm. But I'll always be a Jimmy Garoppolo fan. I have no hard feelings towards him or anything. I think he was great for the team. Unfortunately, we couldn't get over the hump in 2019 with the 2020 playoffs, with the Super Bowl, and last year we couldn't get past the Rams. But overall, I think it was a success because they made it to a Super Bowl. They made it to an NFC Championship game. And they got a pretty good stacked roster. Both star players, veterans, and young talent that look like they could be something in a few years.
And how do you feel about the current roster, even with Trey Lance, starting over? Obviously, like there's the inexperience factor there, but are you confident that this team can at the very least make another playoff push?
Yeah, I believe they can make a playoff push. I believe they're a Super Bowl contender. I believe they have the roster. Now they have to go out and actually prove it. They have to put it all together, show it each week that, hey, we can win these games. And some weeks, it's going to be the defense that wins the games for them because this defense is nasty. With no Nick Bosa, and you got Fred Warner, you got the new Charvarius Ward, who I was a huge supporter of trying to bring him here. I wanted Ward. He was one of my top targets at cornerback. But with Trey, there will probably be a learning curve, obviously. But I think he's got Deebo. He's got Brandon. He's got Kittle. He's got Juice. He's got a running game that's just going to be amazing. If he can limit the mistakes, I think this year playoffs would be. I think a wild card isn't out of the question.
Right.
I'm not saying they're going to go and win the division and go on to the Super Bowl with him right away. But it wouldn't surprise me if this is like Colin Kaepernick all over again. In the sense that, hey, we bring him in. Of course, Colin Kaepernick came in partway in the season, and then they go to the Super Bowl with them. So I'm not saying that it can't be, but probably they'll go to the playoffs, have a run, hopefully, and you never know. You have to have a little luck in the NFL.
Right, you definitely do, and we've seen some teams have that luck. We watched the New York Giants, and I'm not the biggest Eli Manning fan. I think he was clutching a couple playoff runs. And outside of that, I thought he was kind of buns, right? But, I mean, 500 record for his entire career. So, I mean, I think that's the epitome of being kind of an average quarterback. But, when you talk about being lucky, being on a great team, being on a team that plays terrific defense, he took down the monster in Tom Brady, not once, but twice. So anything definitely can happen. Real quick, Jason, before we get you out of here, I want to, give you the opportunity to let everybody know where they can find you and all of your work.
Yep. Twitter at 49ersCap and go to 49ersCap.com. Those are the two places I'm most active.
All right, Jason. Man, I appreciate you coming on last minute too, because I just hit you maybe an hour and a half ago or so.
Yeah. Thank you, Eric. I appreciate the opportunity.
All right, thanks for coming on. I'll see you next time.
Thank you. Yep.
All right, y'all. That was Jason Hurley and Tracy Sandler, two good minds to get on this show for a little bit. Definitely Tracy Sandler, will be seeing her hopefully every Wednesday. I asked her before she got out here. She said, yep, sounds like a plan. I know I'll be seeing her this weekend at the 49ers practice. I'm excited to go tune into that. So there won't be a show Friday, but of course this is premiering Thursday morning while y'all are watching it right now. I appreciate everyone who has tuned in and liked, subscribed, all that good stuff. I need to get some more guests coming on this show so y'all don't just see me talking all the time. But next time y'all see me, I will have more information on what exactly I'm seeing from the 49ers training camp. Until then, I'll see y'all. Peace.
Intercepted. It is picked off by Crocker. Over midfield, he'll run it all the way into the end zone. Touchdown.
Crock TV podcast. Peace.